found the ultimate graphics card for high-end 1440p gaming, but there might be a bit of a catch with this RTX GPU. The RTX 4070 Ti Super is a graphics card which most of us would consider to be pretty high-end. At least its $800 price tag certainly suggests that, but it is discounted in Amazon's Black Friday sale, so if you want to pick this GPU up, or any other for that matter, we'll have it linked with some of my recommendations in the description below. But surely this graphics card should be able to game pretty decently at 1440p, or at least I'd hope so, and it should even be able to play 4K pretty okay as well. But a disclosure, MSI did send this graphics card out for this video today. They didn't pay me, nor do I get to keep it, but we do get to showcase how good this graphics card is, and to find out, I've tested it at not only Quad HD, but 1080p and 4K today, and to avoid any potential bottlenecks, we've tested using I don't know which one I was going with there. We've tested using a 13700K 64GB of DDR5 memory clocked at 6000 MHz, and the rest of the specs for this machine will be listed in the description below. We've tested using the latest NVIDIA Game Ready driver at the time of testing, which I can't remember off the top of my head, but it'll be down there. With that being said, let's get into it. Cyberpunk 2077 is a pretty beautiful game on the Ultra preset, and across both Full HD and Quad HD today, performance is really good. You're getting a competitive gaming experience at 1080p, and the 13700K was slightly holding back the 4070 Ti Super. But 1440p is where this GPU really starts to shine, because maxed out at rasterization, you're getting just south of 100 FPS. 4K is, it's playable with 44 frames, but what I'll do here is do some settings tweaking, maybe enable DLSS, and you're easily going to get 60 FPS plus here. A graphics card like this is insurance against bad ports like Jedi Survivor, because both resolutions, well, both the lower resolutions are performing brilliantly. 1080p is, well, great, you're getting north of 100 frames per second on average here, and the 1% low isn't looking too bad either. And the same can be said for 1440p, as the frame delivery looks pretty good here. 4K, yeah, you're going to need to do some tweaks here, but I reckon you can easily get this above 60 frames per second. Black Ops 6 on the basic preset is, well, it's fine across all three resolutions today. 1080p nets north of 200 frames per second on average, and 1440p you're getting at least 144 FPS, which is great. And it also looks like Nvidia fixed the sort of the 1% low stutters that were in this game, as we're not seeing them in the benchmark anymore, which is great to see. And then when we move up to 4K, yeah, if you wanted to play zombies with around sort of 80ish FPS with a pretty solid 1% low as well, performance isn't too bad here. Also, if you like the GPU videos, consider liking the video and maybe subscribing, as it does really help out the channel. However, God of War is an extremely optimized title, as we got above 60 FPS at all three resolutions today. 1080p is, well, it's great performance with north of 150 FPS. 1440p, absolutely zero issues here either, and 4K, you're still getting more than 80 frames per second with an absolutely solid 1% low as well. This is an extremely well optimized title, and it's also extremely good. I recommend you get this game. Getting a taste of some competitive gaming with Fortnite, and both 1440p and 1080p are solid performers, despite us being kind of CPU bound at Full HD. The average frame rate barely budges when you switch up to 1440p, so I'd definitely say this is the sweet spot here. Maybe you could enable the performance API to get even more performance, but how much performance do you really need? 4K, if you've got a 144Hz monitor, you're definitely set here. There were no issues. Hogwarts Legacy is also a great performer at all three resolutions today. 1080p, yeah, you're getting way over 100 FPS. 1440p, you're getting just under 100 FPS, but 91 is perfectly solid in a story game. And 4K, yes, you're getting below 60 frames per second on average. Just do some settings tweaking and 4K is easily achievable here. And The Witcher 3 on the Ultra preset sees absolutely brilliant performance as well. At 1080p, we were CPU bound, as the DirectX 12 API in this game is really CPU intensive for some reason, but with 150 plus FPS, in a story game like this, can you really complain that much? The average only drops by 5 going up to 1440p, and the 1% low is still looking great compared to it. And then 4K, you're still getting above 90 FPS, so yeah, performance across all 3 resolutions is pretty good on this graphics card. And hitting it home again with solid performance is Forza Motorsport. This is the newest one from Microsoft. It's not the most well-received game, but I still find it quite enjoyable. And with frame rates like this as well, it does certainly help the experience. Across all 3 resolutions today, you're going to be getting really solid frame rates. And not only that, the frame delivery is also very smooth as well, as the 1% lows are very close to the averages. So yeah, performance with the 4070 Ti Super is, well, brilliant. And then there's a ray tracing. 1080p in Cyberpunk is still very good on the Ultra RT preset. 1440p drops below 60 FPS, which is not that ideal. Then again, do some settings tweaking and it's easily achievable. And 4K, yeah, I don't necessarily recommend enabling ray tracing at 4K on this graphics card. Get a 4080 Super or even a 4090 for that. Jedi Survivor was a slightly weird one because 1080p and 1440p responded how you'd think to enabling ray tracing. Like, the performance went down a bit, but it's still pretty playable. But then there's 4K, where the average frame rate barely budged compared to rasterization, which is kind of surprising to me. I ran the test again and yeah, this is just the result we ended up with. I'm not too sure as to what's going on there. I'm not sure if ray tracing is being enabled properly, but yeah, it's a bit of a weird one there. But there's no weirdness in Hogwarts Legacy, as the frame rates again reacted to the way we would expect. 1080p, you're still getting above 60 FPS with a relatively okay 1% low. And then 1440p, you're missing out on 60 FPS by 1 frame per second, so just drop a few settings or enable DLSS. Not bad there. And 4K, yeah, it's a bit of a tall order for this graphics card, but I do think you can get 60 FPS if you were to do some settings tweaking as well. And one thing we've got to say is, no one does ray tracing like CD Projekt Red, because these games react extremely well to ray tracing. Yeah, it does take off quite a bit of performance, but the visual impact is, well, more significant than any other developer, I'd like to say. 90 FPS at 1080p with an okay 1% low is not too bad. 79 at 1440p is also pretty good. And 4K is dropping below 60 FPS. But again, as I've said like 5 million times in this video, just do some settings tweaking and you can easily get it above 60 frames per second. Just like we said at the start of the video, the RTX 4070 Ti Super, it's such a silly name. Just anyways, encumbersome naming schemes aside, 1440p gaming on this graphics card is not going to give you any troubles in the modern day and surely into the future. The 16GB of VRAM is plenty at this resolution, and it's even enough for 4K. More on that in a bit. However, if you wanted to play with rasterization absolutely maxed out, you're going to be fine on this graphics card basically no matter what game you play, as long as it isn't some spaghetti code slop, and even then this GPU still's got quite a bit of horsepower for that. And when you want to enable ray tracing, the performance here is very good as well, as I would expect on a GPU of this caliber. But in the games where you didn't quite get 60 FPS, you can do some tweaking, maybe enable DLSS, as it's really good at 1440p and onwards. So that's always an option for you. And speaking of tweaking at higher resolutions like 4K, you will need to do some settings adjustments to get above 60 frames per second. Ultra presets are notoriously not optimized that well because they're just, everything's cranked up to the highest, and you can do some tweaking to net some pretty big performance gains with not a lot in the way of reduction of quality. So that's what I'd recommend. And then again, you've got DLSS, which works brilliantly at 4K. Yes, I know it's technically not 4K, but it is an option to you and it still looks good, and that's what matters. And when you flip this on its head with 1080p, yeah, it's kind of wasted on a graphics card like this. If you wanted to play at full HD, don't really buy this graphics card. You can get a much more affordable GPU and you won't be bottlenecked as much, as that's a problem we found with the 13700K today. But where I can recommend it though is if you're an esports gamer, pair this with like a 9800X3D and you're going to be having one stellar competitive gaming experience. Remember that little catch we mentioned at the start of the video? Well, we're in that weird 2-month period before new graphics card launches, so I would say if you're not desperate for a new GPU, you might be better off if you just wait. However, if you're planning a brand new PC build, do not wait 2+ months for a new graphics card. You can go out with one of these now and you will not be disappointed with the performance. And on the other hand, if you really need to upgrade your GPU for some reason, maybe your old one's broken or it's on the verge of failing, yet again, the 4070 Ti Super is a extremely powerful graphics card and it's more than enough for like 99% of the gamers out there. But if you're in the camp of someone that wants, not needs an upgrade, I would probably hold off to see what both Nvidia and AMD are cooking in the new year, because if you don't want any of those graphics cards, ones like this will certainly come down in price. So if you wanted to watch a PC build with this GPU, we've done that in a video up there. With that being said, I'll catch you in the next one.